and welcome to your PeopleSoft Test Framework virtual training, brought to you by SpearMC. My name is Tarun Rajamudan, and I'll be your lead instructor today. You can refer to me as Tarun, pronounced like maroon, but with a T. Let's jump right into our agenda. We'll be covering 7 main topics today: a quick business overview of the importance of automated testing, some PTF basics, an intro and advanced dive into PTF development, best practices, understanding change impact and coverage reports, and finally, preparing security and configuration for PTF. Included will be 2 demos and occasional knowledge checks to track your progress. We'll end with some exercises for you to do in your own PTF environment. If you need an environment, we at SpearMC will be glad to provision you access to one of our pre-built FSCM or HCM environments ready for some sandbox learning at a monthly rate. Please reach out to me at tarunraj.amudan@spearmc.com if you're interested. With our agenda complete, let's dive into a business overview. I will be moving briskly through the business overview section and PTF basics, but since this is recorded and can be replayed at will, we should be good. One of the biggest use cases for the PeopleSoft test framework is for automating the regression testing that needs to happen whenever Oracle releases a new bug fix or PUM update. Using PTF allows for increased consistency and traceability while lowering the amount of time spent on each test, more accuracy at a lower cost. Now, PTF isn't the only tool on the market for automated testing. 2 other big competitors are Selenium and Qtp. While they're both solid automated testing tools, PTF has the benefit of being natively integrated with the PeopleSoft environment. This means no more tests breaking with every PUM update, since PTF identifies fields by their PeopleSoft metadata rather than their physical location on the screen. Some of PTF's key features include its record and playback functionality for tests, which allows for automating more tests with greater accuracy in a shorter time. These recorded tests are all stored in your PeopleSoft database of choice as application designer objects. Finally, PTF is already included in PeopleTools 8.51 and above. Simply put, there are a few prerequisites for setting up PTF in an environment. A pre-existing test environment can be set up to record and playback scripts. Now, I assume you're already aware that PTF has plenty of upsides, and that's why you've joined our class today. Let's examine a few of them. PTF allows us to automate testing, which expedites the testing process with fewer resources, but maintains or improves on the consistency of manual testing. It can be used for both technical or functional testing, but is clearly directed towards the functional side. Because it is built into PeopleSoft, migrating and maintaining scripts is native and simple. Like any tool, PTF has some limitations. They can be summarized into 2 main points. PTF does not work outside a PIA instance, and it has limited reporting built into PeopleSoft. The important notes here are where PTF cannot be used. It generally shouldn't be used for performance or user acceptance testing, but it can be used with great results in any other testing cycle. And just like that, it's time to go into some basics. Let's review some terminology. A test is the primary type of test asset in PTF. Tests contain steps that replicate the action of a tester executing a functional test against the PeopleSoft application. A test case is a specific set of data associated with a test, corresponding to values entered or verified in the application. A test can have multiple test cases associated with it. Shell tests are a list of tests you can kick off with a single click. This allows us to mimic complex business processes using test cases as the building blocks. And then logs are an object that save the experience of a single test execution event. Logs report the success or failure of the test execution and include messages and screenshots to indicate where errors occurred. This is a view of the PTF test assets stored within an application database. This is called the PTF Explorer. The system stores assets in a tree structure with collapsible folders for organizing the test assets. The pane containing the tree is always the first pane visible after startup and will always be on the leftmost pane of the PTF user interface. This view allows us to manage tests and folders and create application designer projects to migrate tests between environments. As far as creating objects, we'll start with creating a new folder. Each test, along with its related test cases and logs, is stored in a folder in this tree structure. To create a new folder, it takes 3 steps. In the PTF Explorer, highlight the folder in which you want to create the new folder. Select Create on the top, and then Folder, and enter a folder name. Alternatively, you can right-click on the folder and select Create Folder, as you can see on the screen. Creating a test is just as easy. Follow the exact same steps, but select Create Test instead. And when you create a test, the test editor will open. Now the test editor is where you edit, record, add, copy, and delete test steps. It allows you to create and edit test cases, view both test and test case in a single view, and debug tests. Each row in this test is called a step. Let's look at what each of the fields in each step are. A PTF test is consisted of a series of these steps, and each step is composed of these fields. A sequence, a system-generated sequence number, and tests will execute according to this sequence number. If you move, add, or delete a step, the sequence number is refreshed. On the other hand, you have the ID, which is a system-generated unique identifier for each step. This value doesn't change when you move, add, or delete a step. Test maintenance reports will use the ID value. You have comments. When you click on the comment icon, a comment field will open up. This allows you to add detailed comments for every step. Next, you have active, which is the checkbox. Deselecting this field will inactivate a step. PTF will skip inactive steps when the test runs. PTF syntax checks are also skipped on inactive steps. Each step will be listed as active by default. Next, we have the scroll ID. This field is required for scroll handling, which we'll cover later on. Next, we have type, which is the step type. Often the step type corresponds to the type of application object the step is to take an action on or to validate, such as text, checkbox, browser, and so on. Next, you have action, which is the action the test is to take. Each step type has a set of associated actions. The 2 most common actions used with a text step type, for example, are set and verify. Next, you have recognition, which is the means that PTF uses to identify the HTML object within the application. Often, this is the HTML ID property. Next, we have the value. In a typical recorded step, this is the value the tester entered for an object. In a step recorded in verify mode, this would be the value that was present in the object when it was checked. Note that a value is part of the test case and not the test itself. Here we've got the test recorder. When you use the PTF test recorder to record the steps in a test, the PTF monitors each action you perform in the target application and creates a corresponding step. As you are recording, you can also add additional steps such as verify, log, and conditional statements that do not directly correspond to actions performed in the target application. Accessing and using the test recorder toolbar is as easy as following the steps on the screen. To use a recorder and player, you need to start by hooking a browser, which is our first icon. Drag and drop this icon onto an active PeopleSoft browser to hook the recorder to that browser. PTF will only hook a browser that was originally launched by PTF. Next, you can choose to launch a PeopleSoft application in a browser window using the URL of the default execution option and hook that recorder to the browser. Now, we'll cover what an execution option means later. It's very important. Then the record button begins recording or resumes recording. We've got the square, which stops recording and writes any recorded steps to the test, as well as the pause recording, which will stop recording but not write any steps to the test yet. As you are recording, you can modify steps recorded during the current session without stopping the recording and exiting the test recorder. This list looks at some of the ways that you can edit tests while you are recording them. You can click the left button to move to the previous step in the recording. When you move to the previous step or the next step, recording is paused. You must click the Start Recording icon to continue recording. You can specify whether steps are active or inactive. You can accept step modifications or cancel modifications. Then you can modify the step. There are options like inserting a prefix keyword at the beginning of the text in the value field. For more information on that, look at reserved words. Then we can always edit test step comments while recording. These are some of the options that you have within the Utilities section. You can copy the recording to the clipboard or configure recording settings. Listed on the screen are a few of the recording settings that you can configure. These are also options that you can add in while recording a test, which include verifying an existing field, showing a pop-up, getting a property from an HTML object, checking if a field exists, etc. To execute a test with the test open in PTF, you just go to Test and then Run, or click the green triangle, or press F5. If Yes is specified in the Prompt for Options field in the execution profile, then an Execution Options dialog box will appear. Generally, we set this to No so that the test will run automatically. After the test executes, PTF will open the test log in the log viewer. Speaking of the PTF log viewer, the log viewer has 3 panes. The left pane contains the log details. Typically, the log will contain one high-level entry for each step in the test. The right pane displays the execution options that were used for the test, including what user was running it, when it was run on what server. The bottom pane displays details about the selected entry in the log, such as whether it passed, failed, and what failed. From here, we'll move into our demo.
So before we discuss anything about PTF, execution options is the top priority for me, because for people who ask me questions about how do I test as a specific person, how do I log in as a specific person to test a specific transaction. So this is where you set that up. So PTF, as all of us know, is a role-based testing tool. So you can create as many role-based users as possible and use those users to run specific tests. For example, if I want to create a script for add a person, I want to log in as the HR admin. So what I'm going to do is create an execution option, HR admin, and give the user ID of that employee who has the role of being the HR admin, enter the details for that employee, enter the URL that they're connecting to. So this is very important. You need to make sure you have the right URL in place, and you need to select a couple of options. So let's see what all we need. Name is the HR admin. So this is basically going to define the role of the user. So we like to put this, we like to use very generic values here. That's a recommendation. So if you want to do a Ben admin, so you do Ben _ admin, payroll _ admin, TL _ manager. So depending on what their role is, that's what you want to enter in the name. Prompt for options, yes or no. So this is a drop down where you can select yes or no. When do you see this? So every time you want to run a script, if you want to be reminded to select the right execution. For example, my first test is add a person, and the second one is, let's say, something related to payroll. The first test needs to use HR _ admin to run the script, but my second script, which is related to payroll, needs to be run using payroll admin. So if I select prompt for options as yes, what this does is every time I run a script, this will pop up and say, hey, make sure you're selecting the right execution option. It's like a reminder. So I come in here and I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? Now I'm running the script related to HR, so let me change it to HR. Or if I'm running a payroll one, I will select payroll from the left-hand corner side here and then accept it. As soon as I click accept, you will see that on the right bottom corner, the value that was previously HR_admin changes to payroll admin. Every time you click accept, that value will show in the right bottom corner of the screen, reminding you of what the execution option is or which role you're using to test that script. So for starters, or for people who are very new to PTF, I always recommend you have the prompt for options set to a yes, so that whenever you run a test, this pops up and you realize that you have to select the right execution option. The next thing here is the application details, like the URL, right? So if you observe, the URL will remain the same for all the IDs that we've created because we've logged into one specific database, right? So if you have different URLs, like different testing environments, then you can use different URLs to test them on different testing environments. That can be done here too. Then we have the browser. So this is the most crucial thing here. With PTF, there is one limitation right now, and that is any development work. So if you want to record a script, that needs to be done on IE only. So it has to be Internet Explorer. So for recording, when I say recording, when you want to create a test, when you want to create and record a test, for example, add a person, right? We've been taking that example all day, so let's continue with that. Add a person. If I want to record the script, so the script does not exist, then I would select Internet Explorer and say accept. So that way I start recording the script in IE because that is the only place I'm able to record a script. That's the only way I can do it. I cannot record a script in Chrome. I cannot record a script on Firefox. It by default, it has to be only IE. But you can always execute or run the script that have been developed previously on IE in Chrome or Firefox. And Oracle recommends we use Chrome or Firefox because the test time to run a script on Chrome is Chrome or Firefox is much faster than the one on IE. So for us, when we talk to people or when we give training, we specify that for developing and for troubleshooting the scripts, we want you to use IE because troubleshooting is somewhere where you want to, hook the browser again, re-record a couple of things, come back, rerun it. So until unless one script runs to a path end to end without any issues, you want to stick to IE. Once you know that the script is working as expected and you see the expected result, then you can go on testing it on Chrome or Firefox to save time. So in reality, what you would do is for the development cycle, you would test everything on IE. And for testing cycles, when you do an upgrade or when you apply a pump or whenever you move from one testing environment to the other, you want to test them on Chrome because you know that the script has worked elsewhere and it has had the result that you were looking for. So that's a good judgment for you to make to see when you want to use Chrome, Firefox versus IE. The only limitation, like we discussed, is that you have to record the script on IE. There is no second option to that. But I keep talking to the folks at Oracle, and they have said that they're still working on getting us to develop scripts on Chrome and Firefox, but they don't see it at least in the next couple of releases. So that's what we have. IE is going to be the browser for development and troubleshooting. Okay, the user ID. So every role that you use is assigned every user ID, right? So it's being assigned to a user. So that user ID and the password associated to that user ID is what you will be entering in here. So the idea of doing this whole thing is because now when I click accept and I want to run a script of add a person, then all I have to do is click the play button that Tarun showed you earlier. And when I click the play button, it logs in as SL298 and not the trainer one, which I am logging into PTF as. That is where role-based testing comes into play, and any n number of role-based users that you add here can be used to run those. So this trainer one ID is to just log into PTF. But for testing, you can use any ID, any role-based specific IDs, and run your scripts.